We're here because most people just know you as the placeholder host in the As Not Seen on TV podcast.
The placeholder until they find
and they
someone.
Don't know how much more you've done. So we're going to do a little get to know Drew. It's going to be really fun for us.
But is Robert trying to compete with us?
Why, Robert?
Robert's
His voice from across the way.
This is a working office, Drew.
Yeah,
Oh,
remember
like
when you built a
exhibit?
podcast
Remember?
in the center of our office?
Right.
This is what you wanted, the vibe.
Quiet on set. We're about to record. Oh, Amy, you can walk. It's fine. See, you scared Amy, Drew.
Oh, if you slip and fall from running, we will film that and put it on TV.
All right, so we wrote a little list of fun facts to start with. I think some of them may be lies because you couldn't have possibly accomplished some of these things.
This is going to be a fun session. I can tell right off. Should we be drug testing you today?
Why?
I don't know. You're a little too happy to be here. Just
Am I not always happy? This is terrible.
She's Canadian. She's always happy.
I was going to say,
Canadian.
you're
We need to
painting
drug test you.
a horrible picture for me. I'm usually sour or
You're
something.
finally present and noticing our happiness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the afterthought gift you got that you're drinking out of.
He's trying to take my happiness. He's trying to take me down.
I'm not-
Are you sure you want to do this before we start this
Turn
episode,
this into
Drew?
a roast real quick.
Isn't that the story of my life here?
Go,
Hey,
go.
All right,
does
first
anyone
things
have a banana
first.
peel?
A little run.
Fun fact.
Okay.
You've been featured on an episode of 60 Minutes as a mega fan and stalker. Can you explain, please?
This is a perfect one to open with.
The phrasing of that does not. So, I happen to be a slight fan of Bruce Springsteen. Some people may know. And yeah, so I was in Kilkenny, Ireland, watching a concert just because why wouldn't you go to Kilkenny, Ireland to see a good concert? And we got there, I don't know, a day and a half before the concert to line up to get a good spot to get in. And when we finally did get in, we were near the front row. And there was these other cameras there, which I didn't realize what they were doing because they were filming all before it's like a festival. And I had brought an American flag and a sign that said I'm from Freehold, New Jersey, which I am, which is the same place that Springsteen's from. And I would hold it up during the concert. I was 2 or 3 people from the stage, and the only one with an American flag in Ireland at a concert said I'm from Freehold, New Jersey, and Springsteen just kept pointing at me and stuff like that
Really?
each time. And I'd be on the jumbotron, and it had been months and months later, and I remember my mother called me from New Jersey, very New Jersey hardcore accent, kind of like Dana's, where you're just but that deep down they're very sweet and nice, and but it's like
Thank you.
yeah, my mom.
a
I'm talking about my mom.
Oh.
And she's like, Drew, why are you being called a stalker on 60 Minutes? I'm like, what? And I'm like, so I finally, a couple of days later, people started sending me this link, and all of a sudden they did a story on 60 Minutes Springsteen that they were airing somewhere, I think it was Australia, about the phenomenon. And then in the middle of the link, the woman goes, some boss crazy fans even stalk him halfway around the globe. And right when they say that, there's a sign, me jumping up, a sign says I'm from Freehold, New Jersey. And she's like, case in point, Kilkenny, Ireland.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
So
So it's true.
well, depending on how it's, okay, fine.
Yes. All right,
That
next.
is true. Can I just say though? So you were at the front. What about all those poor people behind you? You're a large guy.
Who are
Holding
they?
up a sign.
Wait a
Holding
second.
up a big sign.
There were people behind us? I didn't look back. Isn't the idea of getting in the front so you can see the front?
Oh yeah, you would be the guy I'd be hating in front of me.
If there wasn't that, it was my big American flag
Yeah.
flapping and waving
Yeah.
the whole time into the evening, and but you got to represent.
That's awesome. All right,
Are we done?
next.
Okay, there's more.
True or false? You went to prison in high school.
Again, the phrasing is somewhat unique. I actually went to death row, but it was a part of a school project, believe it or not. I was in a program where they gave some flexibility in learning. You kind of got to set your own agenda, a curriculum for
Okay.
1 year in this one program, and the idea was to do something very creative. And I had a little TV show in high school. We had a public access cable station for whatever reason. We didn't really have, our school didn't have a ton of like things. Like we didn't have our own football field. The track team would run in the parking lot, but for whatever reason, we got a public access cable station. So
I
thought,
didn't even know they had TVs back then. Were you aware of that? That's interesting.
Drew's
So-
lying, clearly.
So I thought it was kind of interesting, and I got into the technical aspect then, filming cameras, used to film Board of Ed meetings, and then just got kind of into the storytelling aspect of it. And I had always, for whatever reason, been fascinated by the criminal justice system. I read a few things that I had personal opinions about as it had to do with capital punishment. I thought it was particularly unfair towards certain groups of people, which it has been proven to be the case. Minorities, children for sure. The United States, as it turned out, was technically still is one of the only westernized countries in the world that executes minors, because a minor would be someone who committed a crime as a minor. Even if they're executed 20, 30 years later, if you committed a crime when you're 16 or 17, you're underage. So no matter how they try you, if you're later executed, that was as a minor.
Was the
So
guy you talked to a minor?
he was. His name, he's still in prison to this day. He was in a newspaper recently, actually. I read about it because I was curious to see what had happened. His name was Jesse James Livingston Jr. And we have photos. And it was, I think I was a junior in high school. And yeah, he was, I think at the time, a couple of years older than me, but when he had committed the murder, he had been, I think, 17. So he may have been 18 or so when I was speaking with him. And I went to, I flew down, it took about a year, but I got anyone who's going to speak to me on capital punishment I was going to go speak with. And he was in Florida State Prison, which is in Stark, Florida, outside of Tallahassee. And so did the interview with him. Pretty chilling stuff, sitting across from him. Otherwise, you try to think what went different in this person's life than my own. Obviously, a million things, including where we each started out, but a million things since then, that where he ended up where he was. And yeah, it was a crazy experience, man. I always remember thinking about starting to apply for colleges, and here was someone wondering if he was still going to be alive, or what the process was going to be. And ultimately, years later, his sentence was commuted to life. He was not executed. He recently applied for parole and was turned down. I was reading about it in the paper, and his picture was in the paper. And I just kept thinking, man, we were these two young kids in the one picture. And then looking at him now, and I mean, 30-something years later in prison, man. I mean, it's just
All the life you lived during that time, too.
well, I thought about that, and I looked at him and just gray, and I mean, again, it's not about not thinking about the victims, and I'm not soft on crime by any means, but it's not all one topic. It's not all one answer. So that was that. We did an interview, and then pretty fascinating stuff.
Let's see what's next. Oh, you loved college so much that you stayed for 5 years.
That's not true.
What's true?
It was almost 6.
Ooh.
Get your facts right.
Ooh.
See, if you graduated from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism like I did,
I didn't go to high school.
you didn't go to high school even?
Kidding. That's me.
We were told you at least had a GED.
No.
No, that's false.
Yeah.
Now, in fairness, I went to Arizona State. My program was a bit specialized, but you're also dealing with massive, massive size campuses where, sometimes you couldn't actually get some certain core classes on the schedule. Some of the core
Wait,
classes,
you couldn't get to them.
they'd be full.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, they'd be
Stayed
full.
out
Yeah.
too late the night before.
That too, or if you didn't get there in time to register for the class, that became a problem as
Oh,
well.
there
So
it is. Okay,
there was a
gotcha.
hybrid of issues, but nonetheless, I did graduate.
Are you in like a frat or something? I feel like you're like a frat boy. No?
Well, I was very briefly. It wasn't really my thing, and I think I kind of followed along with it because a couple of the guys I met my freshman year were pretty good guys, and that's what they were doing. So I was like, you want to hang out with your friends. But I think 6 months or so into it, it was kicked off campus for activities that were not conducive to anyone's well-being. So, personally, I don't regret that it went away because I wasn't overly.
Right.
That wasn't exactly my scene, but.
What was your GPA?
I'm
just kidding. You don't have to answer that.
I'd like to use a lifeline. I'd like to phone a friend.
All right. Okay. I think this is a typo, Dana. This says Emmy award-winning TV news producer.
For what?
Emmy nominated. I didn't win.
Ooh.
At least
Emmy
I'm-
nominated.
That's right. You tried to trip me
boys
up
and
there.
girls.
You tried to trip me up there.
For what?
For what?
It was
You were
for
a news producer.
That's right. So, I graduated from the Walter Cronkite School, and you don't even know who Walter Cronkite was. So why am
Do I need to?
Not really.
Okay, keep going.
The ship has sailed for you. Google News, whatever it is, Matt Drudge, whatever you watch, Howard Stern.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I worked in Arizona in a news station, TV station after college. I think I only interned there. I don't know that that's considered being employed or not, but whatever it was at the time.
Yeah.
So I was kind of learning the newsroom business from that. And then I went to Reno, Nevada, simply because Reno, Nevada was a TV news market that a lot of people ended up being very successful from. And a lot of young people would go there because if you were successful, you could advance really quickly and get a shot at doing certain things that you wouldn't do. I mean, I had technically never actually been a producer by then, and my first job was producing news there that was live. We'd be doing live TV news on a CBS affiliated network, and that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
I mean, because
A lot of pressure.
you can't get it back,
Yeah.
and you make some interesting mistakes that you got to kind of be glad were 20-something years ago and probably don't exist anymore. But
So where did the Emmy nominated thing come in?
one of the newscasts, they do awards every year, and I just remember our news director and station at the actual half-hour show that I had been producing, one of the episodes had been nominated for an Emmy, and I don't believe that we won, and it would have been, for anyone who worked on the newscast, I was the producer, so certainly it would have been considered an Emmy for myself and the anchors and the team, but we didn't win, but that's why it's Emmy nominated.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good fix, Drew.
Yeah.
What else do we have? All right. You are the founder and CEO of Launch DRTV, a successful creative agency in Los Angeles.
With
So
bad
you
hiring
have-
practices.
You have a job.
with very bad hiring practices,
Yes.
clearly.
How did you start a creative agency?
So when I left news, I had actually had a medical issue, believe it or not, even though I was young. We'd had a huge flood in Reno that had lasted for days, and they were calling it the 100-year flood, and we were all working at the newsroom, and I never did learn to type. So I was kind of doing this, and we're sitting at small little desks, and after days and days of that, my neck and back just went gone. I couldn't move, didn't know what it was. I got to the point where I couldn't move, I couldn't do much, and ultimately I didn't want to take disability, or I didn't want to get paid for not, and there's nothing wrong with that for people, but I was too young in life. I wasn't going to stay there and just collect a check, and I mean, the career that I'd gone there for hit a pretty big roadblock, and I wasn't even sure really at that point that I wanted to do that anymore. I mean, I had some good experience, but some of the things I saw just didn't excite me about news the way I thought it would. So I ultimately went on a path of healing, or trying to heal, and I went all over the country because I was in my early 20s, and I was taking painkillers left and right, and not for fun like a lot of people do, or get hooked on them with booze and whatever. I was taking them just to get out of bed and move and do whatever, and I was getting depressed and sad, and reading about people with chronic pain, and it was taking its toll all over me. And I had a friend who lived out here in California who had a really, really cool place. So I moved out to California just to kind of reinvent, and I still wasn't physically doing that great, but I was I might as well be out by the beach, and I had some friends out here. And one day, for a random reason, I went to just see one more doctor. When I went to the office, he started looking through my chart, and before he even looked at me, he's like, "You've been to every neck, back, specialist, whatever. It's like, have you ever tried yoga? And this was like, 20 plus years ago. I'm like, huh? And he's like, yoga. I'm like, what? Like people chanting and like wearing, sheets and stuff. That was my perception of it. And he goes, that's what people think it is. He's like, but there's this yoga thing down the street here. We're in Santa Monica. And he goes, and it's like a really rigorous workout. He goes, but people have really good, benefits from flexibility, and people have been in car accidents have gone there and gotten better. And, people with a lot of neck and back injuries. He's like, you may just want to check it out. And he seriously goes, and he looks at me, he goes, you're a young guy. He goes, there's really pretty girls. He's like, a lot of like models. I'm like, I like yoga, like,
yeah, I'm in. Mm-hmm.
And so did that for about 2-3 weeks. And I was about 60-70% relief for the first time in like probably a year by then. And then I just really, really got into it. And where I was living was across the street from a library, a public library. And I remember I had a TV, and I had like little rabbit ear TV antennas on, if you remember that, when you didn't like have cable or any of that stuff.
We're too young for that.
Yeah, but I didn't have any money to have cable. So at the time I was living in an apartment building that I got to live in for free because I was the manager of the building. So that was kind of my deal to be able to live there, was manage the building and collect the rent and knock on people's door when they didn't pay rent. So I went across the street, talked to the guy who was teaching the yoga class, and I'm like, I saw this thing on TV last night. It was an infomercial with this guy named Billy Blanks and this Taibo thing. It's really cool. I'm like, you should do this with yoga. And the guy's like, what's that? So literally we just started hanging. I would take the class more. And a few weeks later, I went to the local library and wrote up, because I didn't have a computer, I didn't have a laptop, or didn't own any of that, and it was all kind of new. And I got a copy of a manager agreement, like how to manage talent. And we did a deal of some sort where I was going to manage him, and we were going to create an infomercial, and we were going to create a video series. And I think I spent the next 2.5 years trying to put that together. And I would do that during the days and bartend at nights to make money. And ultimately, we got a deal, and we put that together, and we made an infomercial and a video series. And really what it showed me and everything else was I kind of learned the business during that. I learned what goes into it. I watched people, because we didn't put up the money. We've had an investor group that put up the money. So I watched the whole process of them putting up the money to make the product, what went into it, the thought process, the financials. When we filmed the infomercial, we went around the country with the production team, and they filmed yoga all over the country. And so that really kind of became, what I call like my degree or my education in this world by watching it, because there's no school for this.
How many infomercials do you think you've done since? Ballpark.
Well, long form and short form combined, hundreds. For sure.
More.
Hundreds.
Even
hundreds.
More, yeah.
Yeah. 30-minute, 5-minute, 2-minute, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. If you start adding in digital, tens of thousands of hours of content. We've, done, here in the last 2-3 years, probably $1.5 billion in sales for our different brands. I shouldn't say that exact number because our clients will think they pay us too much, which they don't. They should pay us more. What
was your worst shoot experience, like a disaster happening, if something went wrong?
Which ones were we on together?
If you can think of one.
Well, I can think of several, but I'm not going to say the names because that would be rude. I would say that a lot of what we've done over the years, a lot of people know, has been very celebrity driven, a lot of athlete driven. Not at this point, in the last years, at this point, if it's a product and we think it's a good one and a service, or we want to make money, we have our own brands and products. So it doesn't make a difference to me. But over the years, when people would hire us, we were often hired and kind of became known for the celebrity brand. So we worked with Jennifer Lopez a bunch of times, Cindy Crawford, Paris Hilton was one of the very first spots I directed a long time ago. We did a lot of work with Seymour and all these people over the years, wonderful people. And Drew Brees just retired. We were a great guy. We worked with him, Serena Williams. So we kind of got known for the niche of that. But along the way, you work with certain people that are wonderful and great human beings. And then you work with certain people who are the opposite of that. And, I don't think it has anything to do with what their profession is maybe versus there's some great people and there's some not so great people. So definitely had a couple of the not so great ones, but more of the great ones. But I remember filming a commercial with, let's just say, someone from what had been a very popular all-girl band at one point. And as we were filming, among other things, decided that she did not like eye contact, even from the director. So I thought that was out of a movie and stuff that you only read about, but it was for real. We were all sitting there, the whole crew, and like ultimately I'm like standing way over that way and trying to shout lines to someone who's looking in another direction because they don't like people looking at them. So,
Yikes.
I mean, honestly, I'd probably just go home and call it a day.
Yeah.
But at the time, you have other people's money on the line, and that stuff never fazed me at all. I mean, to me, that was more reflection on them. And like I said, I always took away a lot of the people that we worked with who were amazing. I mean, I thought Serena Williams is one of the nicest people we ever met. We were filming with her right before she announced she was even pregnant. And I mean, she just, whatever you needed, asked her to do. Couldn't have been a sweeter, kinder human being. Drew Brees, I mean, just spectacular. Jane Seymour, dear friend of ours. So, so many people where you feel badly mentioning names because you feel like you're going to inevitably forget someone who's wonderful. Marie Osmond, one of the sweetest people. I mean, we did all the Nutrisystem commercials for years. But
this is a really good segue into the next question. So you just listed all of those people, but you're most known for what right now? Your podcast with Brian Spears.
That's right. And
Explain.
I didn't know I didn't know who that was.
You know who Britney Spears is.
I knew who she was,
Yes.
but I was not like, I was not my music, but thought she was a seemingly nice person. And I remembered when she would be harassed and all those stories, and it used to bother me. I never was a fan of anyone being bullied, and I don't think being a celebrity was an excuse to bully someone at all, by any means, especially a kid, but anyone. So someone had said to us when we started the podcast, do you want to speak or interview Brian Spears? And I was like, who's that? And you guys all looked at me and someone else, I think Kayla screamed. She's like, you don't know who that is? Oh my God. She's like a Britney Spears groupie. Yeah. And they're like, oh, the conservatorship case. And I'd been familiar with it, but I hadn't read about it. Yeah. Or I'd read a little bit, but I just hadn't followed it. I didn't know the whole thing of it. I really didn't. I honestly, my perception from 10,000 feet at the very beginning of this a year or so ago was that it was probably a rich celebrity with a rich dad that were having an argument over $20 million one way or the other. I had no idea that it was, this type of a situation where this person may very well be being held against their will. I mean, that's what a lot of people believe. And there's certainly a lot of concern about that could be the case. It's what people are trying to find out. So I said, okay, let's do the interview with Brian. Why are we interviewing him again? If it's her brother. Does he sing? Does he dance? Everyone's like, no, but he's never spoken before. I'm like, well, right, he's the brother. Like, why wouldn't you're missing it? So I'm like, and I remember I said to Dane, I'm like, all right, tell him that we'll do the interview, but I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So like, if we don't run it, if there's not a great angle to it, then let him know that we won't use it because I don't want to disappoint someone and say, we're going to do this and not. I really didn't get that people have been trying to interview this guy for years. And
I'm so glad you were able to and that you did, because I don't think any of us really understood the magnitude of, Brian having never spoken out. And I even got a call from a family member recently saying, holy crap, your podcast really shed light on the situation.
Yeah.
Like, it was known, but I mean,
it was a part
that
of
was everywhere.
the story,
So
Well,
it's very cool that you brought that to the
I went to bed that night. We put it out, and the next morning, like my people who I hadn't spoken with in a million years since high school, like, I saw you on the news. Like, what are you talking about? I had no idea. And then my phone rings, and it was like the Today Show or Good Morning America from Australia or something. Like, and I thought it was like a prank. And they're like, will you talk about this? And later that afternoon, I mean, every single media outlet, and you're right, to that point of it, we've done quite a few things that were, media heavy events,
And I think the ball has just started rolling on that. So I hope
Totally.
peace and
A
health
lot
and
has
freedom
happened
for everyone.
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
We have a lot more to cover, so moving on.
Let's skip to the fun game.
Let's spice it up a little bit. So we played a little game. We emailed the staff,
Oh, God.
and some responded with their favorite and their least favorite things about you.
That's great. Which ones didn't even
We would
bother
like
responding?
to read them to you. I'll start. We'll leave them anonymous so you can figure out who said them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, guess. Try and guess.
All right. Someone's favorite is you stand up for what's right. They've personally witnessed it, and they like that you stand up against bullies. Very nice, Drew.
That is true. That is very true.
We should wrap up with that one. Let's end on a high note. I
Their
like that.
least favorite is traveling with Drew.
Yeah, that's a tough one to
And
guess.
then they said, enough said. Hashtag TWD, enough said.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What else we got?
We never. So do you think it's unreasonable that if you're traveling and you're traveling with someone and you're my height, right?
Yeah.
And I take the time and effort to book someone's seat, to
Yeah.
make sure they have a seat.
Yeah.
And I put it in front of me just so that if they need anything, they're nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe I ask them not to recline.
Yeah.
No, I would recline so hard.
Yeah. All the way back.
That's why you don't get to go on the fun trips. Okay. And we can just put you up in the little overhead
I was gonna say,
compartment.
I could
That's perfect.
Fit anywhere. Okay. So the next one, favorite thing, paycheck every 2 weeks. Nice. Least favorite, the sound of the blender for his daily smoothie during a Zoom meeting.
Oh, that's accurate.
That's so
Everyone
true.
uses the same blender. I mean, I don't hit the
Yeah,
button
but
any
yours
extra.
is just right at the prime meeting times usually.
Then put a sign up that says no blender during this window. We have a lot of nitpicky people here.
Here's a good one. Favorite thing about Drew. He's very considerate, understanding, and has a big heart.
Good. Moving on.
Least favorite thing
Oh, wait.
about Drew.
Oh.
He likes Bruce Springsteen more than Dave Matthews. Just kidding. But how intimidating he looks and how slow he walks. LOL.
Ooh. So we know for sure who wrote that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dead giveaway.
For Anonymous, there's definitely some giveaways
Uh-huh.
here. Yeah.
Oh, this is a good one. Favorite thing about Drew, he provided quarantine booze to employees, which was very true
That was
and
true.
very needed and appreciated.
That's right. We kept
Least-
everyone drunk during this pandemic.
Necessary. Least favorite thing, he brings his personal items into the office to sell. Anyone need some designer shoes or baby strollers? Send us your best offer.
Okay. So the baby strollers we're giving it away.
Uh-huh.
Arlene's in charge of donating that to like some foster families. It's just been sitting there for weeks, but
What about those
it's not
shoes
for
over
sale.
there?
And yeah, that's right.
Little
There
rack
may
of
be a little
clothing?
rack
Do you wanna
over
donate them
there.
as well?
Well, I mean, I thought that I would get a sense of, some of those marketing sites that have really taken off. What do they call them? Like Tradesy.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
just trying to learn the business
I love learning the business.
by having, some of those things. But it's a little frustrating because, you find out it's like something that was, 5 times more, and then someone offers like 10% of it.
Well, it's
and
a garage sale type
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
so it's like you'd rather just kind of give it to someone,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
no one here wears my size. I've offered stuff for you, for Damon, and for you, for some of your relatives, and it's like,
Yeah, I-
very few people wear like double XL or whatever, so
That's true.
you try.
That is true.
Here's a good one. All right, favorite thing about Drew, his drive and creativity. Least favorite thing about Drew, when he's talking and turns away from the mic during a podcast.
We know who said that one too.
And we have time for one more
And we
joyous
have time
thing.
for all of them.
Okay.
Keep going, quick.
Favorite. He knows how to make fun of himself. Least favorite. There's so many things to make fun of. We are getting a backlog in post-production work.
Move faster.
All right, another one. Sounds like an editor as well. Favorite thing about Drew, needing an export ASAP. Least favorite thing about Drew,
Doesn't look at
never
it.
watching the export.
Right. No, it's just,
That is the best.
no, people get needy. It's like, what am I supposed to like send a note? Okay, I've watched it. This is like, I mean,
Yes.
That is good. That's good. Okay. Favorite thing about Drew, he looks out for you. He also bought 1856 Nearest Green whiskey for us. Least favorite, he keeps posting all these delicious steaks on his social media account but doesn't share. And I'm super jealous of his damn Traeger.
Traeger. That's right, man. It's the new baby.
People are watching your social.
That's right.
there's-
See?
You better cook us some food.
I know.
Sean brings us food in sometimes.
Sean's a
His
good
Traeger.
person. Sean's a good person.
Yeah, that's true.
But the thing is that Sean's had like a year or two ahead of practice, and
Should master.
yeah, I've got to get it down first because I Sean's a meticulous man. Like I got my work cut out for me there.
Okay.
But he's smart. He knows not to beat the boss.
Are you ready for more least favorites?
I've got to call in
All
3
right.
minutes.
Big favorite, big heart. Least favorite, leaves his peanut butter spoon in the sink.
Very true. That is
There's no
annoying.
proof of the
Keep
last
going,
part.
keep going.
Favorite thing, he'll literally wear the same shirt every single day.
Not
Oh wait,
true.
that was the least favorite. Sorry. Favorite thing. It's pretty fashion. It's a pretty fashionable shirt, and he knows everybody will be looking at his awesome shoes. Sorry, I think I fucked that one up. Sorry.
Beep.
All right, favorite. He's super inspired and driven. Least favorite. He has tattoos from a ton of top artists that I want to go see.
That's true. Favorite thing. Drew's great attention to details that help a project to be better and reach farther. Least favorite. Drew's attention to details that make a project take longer.
That was good. Did you have fun getting to know yourself?
This has just been wonderful, and I wish you both well in your new careers and ventures and all of those things, and very fortunate. So thank you very much.
We love you too.
Yes, thank you very much. Good. I'm going to go do my call now.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.